the generic system for humans seems to be a form of polygamy. That's almost the default. Why would you have this kind of romantic component to it? This very strong pair bond, because you get that in polygamous marriages. That's what happens when a new wife is taken on. It's not because, well, sometimes it's because the first wife, who is always becomes the chief wife, says, "You're boring, go and find another little one to play with." I mean, literally, that is the kind of thing that happens. Or the husband actually falls in love with somebody else and wants to bring this new wife, younger, always younger, into the household, and then it's a trade-off for the first wife, or if this is the third wife of the first two wives, as to whether they're happy with that arrangement or whether they just shrug their shoulders and go, well, we can live our lives quite happily without having to be bothered by the husband, as it were. So it's still a mystery in that sense. So the question then is, what's underpinned the evolution of this kind of romantic falling in love component? So the classic answer has always been, well, it must be the need for biparental care. Human babies are born absolutely premature by a whole year. That's why they're all kind of floppy and useless, and don't even smile at you. Never mind behave in an engagingly human way. You need something to sort of persuade you to keep investing in it until it's completed its growth that all other monkey snapes do before birth, and starts to, if you like, become more seriously human. And that is so taxing for the mother that having somebody else around, why not the male, to help out is absolutely necessary. And you kind of go, well, that sounds awfully like American culture to me and not real life. Where in the world does that actually happen? And the answer is, well, sometimes in hunter-gatherer societies, the men dandle babies on their knees and do things like that, just as all men everywhere do. Change the odd nappy here and there, but they're not really that good at helping out. They're much better when the kids are old enough to, fire a bow and arrow and learn how to do these kind of useful tasks. So I deeply suspect the amount of paternal care that humans give, despite desperate efforts to claim that it's part of our nature, simply isn't the reason at all. And that's because in the end, the people who are most valuable to the mother in almost all societies, and just as much in ours as anybody else's, is the grandmother and the sisters, and maybe your female best friend. That these are the ones that really make the business of, particularly those early years, possible, if you like, less trouble-free than they might do on your own. And sort of, yes, males are useful if they're own land that you can farm and produce lots of crops to feed your children on and all those kind of things. And we know that's important. We know from historical demography data, for example, from Europe, that in the 18th and 19th centuries, that women whose husbands were landed peasantry, so they only had a few acres, they weren't the nobility, they weren't even middle class, they were peasants, a bit like crofters, you might say, in Scotland. They've got 5 acres of land or something like that, and they grow a few crops. The more land the husband had, the better the survival chances of the wife's children were. And of course, for landless peasants who were day laborers, that the only way they could earn a living was to hire themselves out by the day to help with other people's farms, their wives, had high mortality rates because when they needed to go to the doctor, they didn't have the odd fiver to spare for the doctor's fee. They, if they didn't have any money, they couldn't buy any food. All these kind of things piling in on them. The same old story that we even now, still have to cope with. So, yes, once you have agriculture, once you have wealth accumulating, then the males can contribute indirectly, but that comes late. That doesn't happen until 8,000 years ago with the Neolithic agricultural revolution. Prior to that, for several million years, our lineage, are just hunter-gatherers. So those kind of issues don't necessarily work out. And typically anyway, you might say, well, maybe a husband who's a particularly good hunter is the equivalent thing. And the answer is not really in hunter-gatherer societies, because if he's a good hunter and he can bring down mammoths instead of, a chicken, always in those societies, those big prey that are hunted are shared with the whole camp. It's only small things that you eat within the family of the hunter on their own. So, it seems to me there really isn't all that much evidence to support the claim that this romantic relationship is there for biparental care as such, as the technical term is. And the only obvious answer seems to be this is a hired gun problem. Right. So in effect is happening is that the females are wanting to attach themselves to a particular male, essentially for protection.
What's happening, people? If you enjoyed that, then press here for the full, unedited episode. And don't forget to subscribe. Peace.